So today's project is a tiny hammer, based on another tiny hammer that I made because I had a hankering for making a tiny hammer, and somebody saw that tiny hammer and decided that they wanted a tiny hammer, and I decided I would like to make them one for money. But no, as you can see, I traced the same rough dimensions. Traced is a terrible word for what I did to mark it. Marked rough center, and then drilling a hole with the jankiest and most effective jig that I have come up with. Sorry, there's a lot happening in a very short period of time, but I'm drilling through mild steel rod, throwing away drill bits like nobody's business, and filing the burr clean. And I'm using mild steel rod because it's a small hammer meant for a small job, and any hardening that it could do is basically non-existent because it is the stock rod you get from Home Depot. I believe it's a 1/4 inch. That doesn't sound right, but maybe it's 5/16. Anyway, masterfully getting rid of the burr with absolutely no errors whatsoever with a hand file. Yeah, I basically got it in my head that I would like to make hammers, and so I decided to just do it. And to figure out what their purpose would be later. Ideally, these would be made out of 1045, and I have a hammer I've made since filming this, made out of 1045 that I heat treated, and I think it worked. I don't know if it worked, but I think it worked. Which also doesn't matter, because it's never going to hit anything harder than itself. It'll only be hitting copper, brass, or worst case scenario, stainless steel, and even then. Because it wouldn't be a video of mine if I didn't pull out a fucking hand file. Here's me hand filing, to moderate accuracy, the head of the hammer flat. One of my favorite parts about this is it doesn't take an awful lot of time, and the end result is a tiny thing that, for its own purposes, is great. It does exactly what it needs to do. It's a weight on the end of a stick, and it is pleasing to look at, it is pleasing to hold, and it is pleasing to swing. I think the only thing that I would like to do different is probably make longer handles. Because one of the practical uses for these could be for engraving stuff or very light percussion, and it would be good to have as long as a handle as is necessary, while also having the option to choke up on it. You can always choke up on a hammer, but you can't make a longer handle without making a longer handle. Do you know what I mean? Start with extra length, then cut it down. Just like you do with trees or people. Yeah, and one thing that I learned through these exercises, and I feel like I already knew it to some extent, is the finish on the hammer head is what is imparted onto the end product of whatever you're hitting. That is just the nature of the hammer, especially if it's a softer material. Basically like that, the hammerhead is ready to be pretend quenched. I mean, it's being quenched, but really, okay, thank you. I muted that for my own sanity, and yours. The purpose of this is really just to blacken the outside, just to make it look kind of neat and pretty. That shit did not harden at all. It's mild steel. directly into cold tap water and destroying the temper on my needle nose pliers. That's what those pliers are for now. Pinching things. And since making this as well, I I love me a good sharp draw saw. Anyway, since making this, my method for carving the handles has greatly improved. This is still in my earlier phase where I didn't realize that I should just carve it by hand with a knife. But that stick will be the handle, which is made out of black walnut, which is a not necessarily really good handle material for hammers, but it's a teeny tiny hammer. If it ever breaks, I will think to myself, man, it'd be a shame if I had more walnut to make another handle out of it. And this little piece of dogwood here, that is going to be, I'm shaving it down to be the wedge later. And enter the draw knife. Wonderful tool, very simple. More than overkill to clamp this and draw knife it down for something this size. This process probably took me, I don't know, 20 minutes, maybe a little more. I can hand carve one with a knife now in about 5. Not that it's a speed contest, but if I want to make more hammers for people, which I kind of do, it's really fun. I'd rather do it efficiently for everybody involved. Regardless, it is very satisfying to use a little draw knife. It's a good tool, and it has on a bigger stick, it has a much greater effect in productivity. Yep. So the head can just slide on. I'm still gonna tap the end just to make sure it can go down as far as it could possibly go. And when you make a tiny hammer, am I hammering with my tiny hammer? Yeah, I am. You stupid son of a bitch. Tiny hammers are not meant to handle other tiny hammers. It's got to have a little more gravity to it. Anyway, cutting the slot for the wedge. Conveniently down to the line where the hammer head stopped. And wait for it. That's my favorite cut in the last year. It's just so damn satisfying. So just sort of finger tighten it on, make sure it's lined up the way you want it. Get some glue in your dogwood. Tell your doctor about it. And hammer that shit home. I think that the tiny hammer's purpose might be a little more in tune to, what do you call it? Engraving and fine jewelry making, as opposed to any genuinely heavy-duty work. And we'll let that glue dry a little bit. Not a lot of it, but a little bit. That little more knife is probably one of my favorite knives. I've still got to make a knife that has those qualities. So good. Anyway. And back to the slow way. Be damned if it doesn't do a job. Yeah, for the most part here, just working on contours and stuff like that, and mimicking handle shapes that I can think of in my memory, but there's no real plan for the handle. As long as it feels okay and doesn't feel like a hot pile of crap, it's good enough. And of course we're going to sand it. There's always sanding. Sanding and hand filing are becoming the two main things that I do with that bench. It's just what on and what of that change. Now, I don't necessarily know why to put an angle like that in there if both heads are the same rough shape and flatness, but, you know, it looks nice. It's right about here where I realized I could have hand-carved that whole damn thing. Clean up the bottom there, real careful like. Ta-da! And moving up the grits exceedingly fast. I think it went straight from 220 to micro mesh, and going up micro mesh at about Mach 9. Now, I haven't used a lot of it, but I really like the finish that micro mesh puts on things. I understand why people enjoy it so much. Wiping it off with my shirt because I'm a big old gross boy. And that's basically the final sanding. And it's about that time. Oil her up. Using regular mineral oil. Nothing insane. No special formulas. No nothing like that. I've found that the lasting visual effect of mineral oil is very non-degenerative. Boiled linseed oil I still wholeheartedly enjoy, but something about this stuff, it doesn't discolor, it doesn't darken, doesn't oxidize, it just protects it and makes it look nice. It's all that really matters. Boiled linseed oil is great for axes, hammers, many other things. It would be fine on this too, but I find on black walnut it's not particularly kind to it in the long run. It starts to look muddy or like matte, but not in a good way. Not like a person named Matt, but the finish, you know what I mean. I got no problem with any mats out there that I know of. Quick buff up of the hammerhead. This is 400 grit, I believe, and I put a paper towel under there just to slightly soften any edges that might catch. And I'm putting my thumb directly in front of the camera so that you can't really see anything that's going on, but you feel it's going on. And I've abandoned the paper towel, probably rightfully so. I have not abandoned my thumbs, which is a mistake in general, and I've continued to talk about my thumbs like they're important. And that resembles a hammer. And there's his brother, which is just a smidge smaller and a little better centered. But I delivered the hammer on the right to the person that wanted it, and from what I understand, I hope you still get a little bit of enjoyment out of your tiny hammer. It is a functional, neat looking thing, and there's only 2 of those like it that exist. Uniqueness does not necessarily mean anything extraordinary. It's just kind of neat. Did I say kind of deet or kind of neat? I meant neat. I did not mean deet. Shut up, Adrian. And because I was curious, I made a little engraver out of spring steel to go along with it. That was a sort of a freebie. It technically works, but I don't know how good it is, and I would like to gain more practice in making these kinds of things. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy the tiny hammer. It's all of 21 grams. Maybe more, maybe less, but no more than 30. Alright. Bye.